Now, here we will discuss different functions of assessment. We have 4 functions of assessment: formative, diagnostic, placement, and summative. Now, we will talk about each of them. First off is formative assessment. When we say formative assessment, it provides diagnostic feedback to students based on short-term intervals. It means na, say for example, the teacher is doing a lecture or a discussion now, and then afterwards she will give a quiz. Now, the quiz there, or the practice procedure na ibibigay niya, that is a formative assessment that is utilized in order to determine kung may natututunan ba kayo sa na-discuss niya, or how much knowledge or how much of the content was retained to the students based on the presented or just recently presented topic. Ganun siya. Now, please do bear in mind na ito naman na form of assessment is, or function of assessment, is in order for us to monitor. Yan yung purpose niya, for monitoring purposes. Ganyan. Now, the second function of assessment is the diagnostic assessment. This is when we determine what are the persistent and recurring difficulties, or yung, say for example, you do the test, and then you found out na some of the students are finding the topic difficult. Now, in the diagnostic assessment, what you do here is to determine those specific difficulties. Yan. Kumbaga, for example, if you started na nagkanda ka ng quiz or activity, tapos nakita mo na nahirapan yung mga estudyante, so you try to determine saan mismo sila nahirapan. Hence, you do the diagnostic assessment. In the diagnostic assessment, yung underlying causes o yung specific na problems ng bata, yung hinahanap natin. And then, pag nakita na yung specific problems, you create or you plan a remedial instruction. Yan. In order to help the child develop or improve. Ganon ang purpose ni diagnostic assessment. Now, the third one is the placement assessment. Now, here in the placement assessment, what we do is to determine how students will be grouped according to their learning capacities or according to some criteria. Yan. So, kumbaga, how are we to categorize our learners based on them? Now, say for example, students who have the same tawag nito, learning style. Say for example, pwede na yung mga estudyante na pareho ng learning style, visual ba, yan, visual sila lahat, or kinesthetic sila lahat, or tactile sila lahat, or auditory, they can be grouped together based on that. And placement assessment can be utilized in order to do such groupings. Ganyan. Okay. Now, what is the purpose of this placement assessment? Kasi nga, we need to provide, or as stated earlier, we need to provide equal opportunities to all our learners. And one of which, or one way to do that, is to determine what type of learning group is our student capable of. Ganon. And with that area, we can help our learners be more improved or learn better. Ganyan. Now, the last function of assessment is the summative assessment. This is when we provide an overall summary or an overall measure of the mastery level. Say for example, examinations, yan, or final practical exams, or final practical demonstrations, mga ganyan. That which, yung summative assessment, measures how much are the students able to master. Are they competent or not competent? Are they capable or not yet capable? Ganyan. Among the different functions, or among the 4 functions of assessment, only summative assessment is graded and recorded. Kasi nga, this is when we are able to measure their mastery or attainment of a certain course, of a certain module, or a certain unit. Yan. How much were they able to understand based on all of what was described or discussed by the teacher, or based on what was facilitated by the teacher instructor. Ganon. And hence, since it's like a culminating assessment procedure. Yan. So as to recall, we have 4 functions of assessment: placement, diagnostic, formative, and summative. And only summative assessment is graded. The other criteria or the other functions are then placed in order to do other functions as well. Okay? Now, in terms of evaluation, we also have these 2 types of tests. Yeah. We have what we call the criterion reference and also what we call the norm reference. When we say criterion reference, this is when, say for example, si teacher nag-set ng target score. Now, that target score is what you call the criterion. Okay? Or kumbaga, target level of mastery. Yan siya. What happens in the criterion reference test is that each student's performance is then compared to the set criteria or standard. And it will point out what each student is capable of doing. Moreover, sa criterion reference test, it will not matter how your other classmates or how the other students perform. And it will not relate your performance to other students, but more on you yourself or how you yourself is capable of doing. Say for instance, you took a 100-item test wherein the teacher had instructed na yung passing score is 70. Yan. Now here comes, or your results had arrived and it was seen na your score was only 70, your score was 72. Ganyan. And since yung nakaset na criteria is 70, henceforth, we will only compare your achieved score of 72 to the target criterion or target score of 70. Ganon lang siya. Meanwhile, ito naman si norm reference testing. This is actually when we compare students' performance to other students' performance. Yan. So, kumbaga, who among the students are able to, or in comparison to other students in the class, what is your performance? Ganon siya sa norm reference. Say, for example, we have 5 sections na nag-take ng achievement test. Ganyan. Now, it was found na sections, yung nag-take na sections is sections A, B, C, D, and E. Now, ikaw na nasa section A, yan, yung average score ng section nyo is 20 out of 50. Tapos, yung average score naman ng section B is 22 out of 50. So, comparing the 2 sections or the performance of the 2 sections, you can say na section B performed better than section A. Meaning, you are comparing the group of students' performance with each other. It can also be possible na, say for example, sa classroom before, wherein yung teacher is nagde-declare ng top 10 or honor students sa klase. Yan. Now, what happens there is that you determine sa section na yon sino yung pinakamataas yung average grade, sino yung pangalawa, pangatlo, pang-apat. Yan. Now, that is what we call norm referenced evaluation. Meanwhile naman, yan, say for example, yung sa senior high school ngayon, or yung sa senior high school na strategy of or technique na pag-determine ng honor students, diba? Meron tayong with honor, with high honor, with highest honor. Yun sa ganon is that we are checking kung yung score ba ng estudyante or yung grades ba yung ng estudyante nakaabot ba dun sa grades na pang with high honor, with highest honor, or with honor. Ganun. That is criterion reference naman. Okay? Now, so as to recall, criterion reference is when we compare based on a target score or target standard. Meanwhile, norm reference is when we compare students' performance with other students.